So we're here today. We decided to film at this location here in Ridgefield, Washington at the Kathleopootl Plank House. Actually, the old pronunciation would be Gothlepoots. It's near an old Chinookan village, about 14 houses. And we thought this was an appropriate location to film the interview just because of its obvious ties to our Chinookan culture. My name is Greg A. Robinson, and I am an enrolled member of the Chinook Indian Nation. And yeah, so this is the only full-size Chinookan house, and it's full of different Chinookan cultural items and just a really feel-good spot to do an interview. The theme for me when I constructed these pieces for this exhibit was to show the continuation of culture as opposed to the stagnation of culture. A lot of times in museums, you'll see artifacts and pieces that are in cases and are non-moving and stagnated, and it's almost like it's a snapshot in time where culture ended, as opposed to that's kind of a snapshot picture of culture in movement. So the basic theme of my exhibit is to show the continuation of that movement, those cultural currents, so to speak, like the Columbia River that always flows and has flowed, since the beginning of time. And that's what I want people to come and experience, and to see that in both the physical sense and the abstract sense, and everything from pre-contact times to post-contact times, and the disruptions caused by disease and grave robberies and recovery and resurgence, and so all of that is movement. And so I try to show some of all of those things in this exhibit. Probably the most key piece for me in this is a panel. It's a flat panel of red cedar, and it has a number of different components on it, and they all signify different aspects of our cultural life for Chinook on the Columbia River and the Willamette River. As pieces such as orca, a pot of orcas at the mouth of the river, which just signifies the power and danger of the mouth of the river. And at the other end of the panel is representative of the falls and the rapids upriver, and kind of, again, the connection between the start of our culture way back and still flowing out, just like the river does. I reference the land of the dead and the movement when our people pass and they take the journey by canoe over to the land of the dead, where they are able to then live normal lives with their relatives. And so there are a number of references to that, and kind of the imagery of the kind of odd imagery of what it would be like for mortals to view objects and people on that side of the river, because as mortals we can't really comprehend or make sense of what we're seeing. To them it's all normal. For example, maybe if you were able to go over there and look, you'd see skeletons, and they'd be moving around, and the canoes are rotten and broken, and nothing seems right. But to them it's all perfectly normal, but us as mortals don't have the capacity to view that. So that's all included, that movement of transitioning from this mortal world to that supernatural world. And a little bit about, there's three little figures that are floating in the river, and they're kind of caught in currents, and they can't cross over adequately to the land of the dead. And that's because, referencing the disruption from grave robberies and perhaps just not having a proper burial due to the massive die-off from disease or improper treatment. So it references that. When people come to the exhibit, what I'd like, hopefully, for them to walk away is, of course, just to be thinking about the complexity of our culture, but mainly that perhaps they understand more comprehensively that this culture is ongoing, and there are still Chinooks living and doing their culture, practicing their culture right here in the Portland area and Vancouver area like they have always done. And despite some of the disruption and post-contact woes that we've experienced, that we still have survived and we continue to thrive and push forward into the future in this modern world. And so, yeah, I hope it's thought-provoking, and a lot of it perhaps won't be understood. And I think that little bit of that mystery is fine. But yeah, just to intrigue some thought and to get them thinking about the culture that is right here in their homelands. The center has really provided an opportunity for contemporary artists, Native artists, to really have the freedom to express their feelings and their emotions through their art in ways that are perhaps more liberal than what you would find in the confines of gallery work or work in a traditional style museum exhibit. The ability to have the artist's voice be the driving focus for this exhibit is quite different from what I think a lot of day-to-day museum exhibits allow. And to have that freedom for expression for me has been really thought-provoking, and it's allowed me to kind of go down some creative alleys that I haven't explored. And so it's been a very, very liberating experience. I'm very grateful, and I think it'll be a real banner and hopefully create a little impetus for other museums to follow suit. And I think it's kind of a groundbreaking idea for a new center like this to really allow the artists, the Native artists, to drive the exhibit outside of the normal confines of museum process. Typically when I produce work, I try to stay within parameters of my cultural history, what constitutes Columbia River Chinookan art and that art form. There are some fairly specific rules and art identifiers that I try to stay within the scope of that. And a lot of the work I produce is for sale, so I have to keep in mind, one, what's going to be attractive to a buyer, but also how to stay true to the art form and to keep it an honorable representation of Chinookan art. Whereas with this new center, I'm able to produce work that's not necessarily for sale. I have the freedom to kind of do stuff that's a little odd. For example, the Land of the Dead articles that would not normally probably be attractive to a buyer, but are exciting for me to produce because it's a direct representation of a kind of an abstract idea about Chinookan culture. And that's just fun, and carving for a living is fun, but it's fun to have the freedom to produce work that are not constrained in any way.